Let's start off with Ozempic, okay? Huge buzzword, literally, like, people were just randomly talking to me about this yesterday. I didn't bring it up to them. They brought it up to me. So Ozempic is semaglutide, okay? It comes in dosages of 0.25 milligrams, 0.5 milligrams, and 1 milligram. It is a subcutaneous injection. I'm going to show you a picture of the pen that on a later slide. Now, you inject it once a week into your skin, like on your arm. It's made by Novo Nordisk, which is a Danish. It's a Denmark company. They're actually huge makers of insulin, and so now they also make Ozempic, semaglutide as well. It was approved for the treatment of type 2 diabetes in 2017. So it's been around for, going on 6 years now, and it lowers the hemoglobin A1C because, of course, that's the goal for diabetes medications, whether it's metformin, et cetera. And it lowers hemoglobin A1C by 1.6%. But it was also found to lower weight, and on the original studies, it was found to lower weight by 10 to 13 pounds. Okay, how does this happen? Why does Ozempic cause weight loss? Does it magically cause us to just burn calories? No, it does not. And oh, by the way, so Ozempic is a GLP-1 agonist. You might hear about these GLP-1 agonists, okay? It's glucagon-like peptide. It causes your pancreas to secrete more insulin. That's its, quote, mechanism of action. But it does something else to your brain. At higher doses, at the 1 milligram dose, it causes appetite suppression, okay? Now, Ozempic to this day, is not approved for weight loss. It's approved by the FDA to treat diabetes. Oh, by the way, it just happens to cause a 10 to 13 pound weight loss as well, but it does it through appetite suppression. Okay, so this gets us to the graph and the map that I previously showed you, okay? So, it's important to remember, matter can never be created or destroyed. So if we're literally adding mass to our bodies, it needs to be because we are ingesting matter. We are literally eating the weight that comes into us. So in order for us to lose weight, we need to ingest less matter, okay? So Ozempic works by helping people eat less. Okay, that is its mechanism of weight loss. So you cannot use Ozempic and eat the same. You cannot. Okay, the studies that were done with Ozempic were done in conjunction with a 500 calorie per day deficit for people. They had to eat 500 less calories per day. Okay, it was never done with, hey, take Ozempic and you just keep eating what you normally eat. Absolutely not. It was also done with doing 150 minutes of exercise per week. So that's 30 minutes of exercise a day, 5 days a week. So just know, this has never been studied with, hey, just take Ozempic and go about your business. That is not how it works. You have to eat less as well. Now, sales, huge, $9 billion in sales in 2022. It is by far the biggest seller for Novo Nordisk. It blows all of their insulin sales out of the water. It is up 77% year over year. So there's a huge increase in Ozempic prescriptions and use nationwide. Now, this is probably, in terms of the financial implications of Ozempic, this is probably the most important bullet I'm going to tell you, and that is, it costs $995 for an 8 milligram pen of Ozempic. And that is the largest, in other words, the most milligrams in a pen. Here's the secret for almost all medications, including Ozempic. The dosage doesn't change the cost of the medication. So these medications, semaglutide, it has to be titrated. In other words, you have to start out at 0.5 milligrams. And then after a while, you increase it to 0.5 milligrams. And then you increase it to 1 milligram. And it takes actually 16 weeks of slowly increasing the dose until you can get up to the 1 milligram. But as you're taking those lower doses, the cost of the pen doesn't change. So if you get to the point where you're on 1 milligram in order to have the weight loss effects of Ozempic. You need the 1 milligram. So in order to do that, you would have to get 52 milligrams a year. So if you take 52 and divide it by 8, that's 6.5 pens per year. So you take the 6.5 and you multiply it by the $995, then that is $6,478 for a year's worth of treatment with Ozempic. Now, keep in mind, that is, when you're looking at your pharmacy claims, that's probably less than what you're paying per patient per year for Ozempic, because that's the 8 milligram pen, okay? The vast majority of the pens that your company is paying for is probably not 8 milligram pens. It's the smaller pens. So they're paying essentially $995 for less Ozempic. So probably the most like concrete thing I can tell you today to help you spend less on Ozempic is like have them use the 8 milligram pen. It's like paying the same amount for a half carton of eggs or 18 eggs. Okay, if you want eggs, why don't you get the 18 carton of eggs, not the 6 carton of eggs? So once somebody is on the standing dose of 1 milligram for a prolonged period of time, then they should be getting 8 milligram pens, because that's going to get you the most Ozempic for your money when you are purchasing it. Okay, next up, Wegovy is also semaglutide. It's the exact same medication, but the weight loss effects of semaglutide only work at the higher dosages. It only suppresses appetite at the higher dosages. So they said, hey, let's do an even higher dose of semaglutide in a study. Instead of maxing it out at 1 milligram of semaglutide, let's have 2.4 milligrams of semaglutide. Again, weekly skin injection. So Wegovy is the exact same medication as Ozempic. It's just a higher dose. It's the 2.4 milligrams of semaglutide. Again, made by Novo Nordisk. Wegovy, so the 2.4 milligram dosage of semaglutide, is FDA approved for weight loss. So for people who are obese and have some other medical problem, like high dyslipidemia, so in other words, high LDL cholesterol or hypertension, which again, over 2/3 of people with obesity have some sort of a manifestation of metabolic syndrome, have some sort of metabolic disease to go. So the majority of people who are obese have some sort of health consequence from their obesity. Now, there are some people with obesity who have no adverse health consequences of their obesity. It's called the healthy obese. Upwards of 1/3 of people who are obese are actually healthy obese. They have no adverse consequences of it. Okay, so they had to have some sort of adverse consequence with it as well. Now, believe it or not, they did a study in kids as well, ages 12 and over, and Wegovy has actually been approved for weight loss in kids 12 and over as well. This is a new approval. It was in 2021. So the Ozempic for diabetes was approved in 2017, and the Wegovy was improved in 2021. Again, it works in the same way through appetite suppression in the brain. You have to eat less. Now, it lowered weight by 35 pounds. That is a lot. A lot. 35 pounds is a lot. Now, keep in mind, these people had a starting weight of 232 pounds. So it got them to just under 200 pounds. So I am in no way saying that it's going to get you from 232 pounds. Now, listen, you could be 5'2" and 232 pounds. You could have a super high BMI. And so if you lose 35 pounds and you're 5'2" and you're just under 200 pounds, like, guess what? Like, you're still obese. So it doesn't necessarily, quote unquote, cure your obesity, but it does lead to significant weight loss. Now, because Wegovy is so new, sales have been 913 million, so far less than the Ozempic in 2022. However, it's rapidly growing. It is up 4x. It's up 400% year over year from the previous year. So while Wegovy sales are lower, they are dramatically and rapidly expanding. Now, here we go. It's priced higher. Okay, so here you've got a 4-pack. So 1 month supply is $1,432 at the 2.4 milligram dose. Okay, so notice they didn't make it super easy, right? You'll be like, oh, okay, look at that. And it's going to cost me $17,000 if you take the $1,432 for a 4-pack, in other words, a 1-month supply, you multiply it by the 12. The Wegovy costs $17,184. So they didn't make it super easy on the dosing, right? So you could literally save money by just getting the Ozempic and getting the 8 milligram pen of Ozempic. And then, but you'd have to set the dosing so that you were only getting 2.4 milligrams out of the 8 milligram pen of the Ozempic to equal the Wegovy. So listen, the people at Novo Nordisk are trying to make as much money as humanly possible. Like, they're not trying to help you save money. So they are not like giving you the same medication in a way to like minimize how much you pay for it, right? So they've basically packaged it and they've used the dose to maximize their reimbursement. So there is going to cost you 17 grand, over 17 grand a year for the Wegovy. Okay. Next up, Mounjaro. It's made by a completely separate company. It's a totally different medication. It's Tirzepatide. I'm going to say that again. Tirzepatide. Okay, it's in the same category as semaglutide. It's a GLP-1 agonist. It also has an additional mechanism of action as well that I'm not going to get into, but just know that it's sort of more powerful, if you will. It comes in 5, 10, and 15 milligram dosages. Again, it's an injection with a pen similar to the Ozempic. It's made by Eli Lilly, the American pharmaceutical company that's based in Indiana. It is FDA approved right now. It is FDA approved for type 2 diabetes only. It is not yet approved for weight loss. It is most likely going to be approved for weight loss this year in 2023, but it is not yet. It was found to lower weight by more than Ozempic. They actually did a head-to-head trial where it actually lowered weight by 25 to 52 pounds for people, again, starting at 248 pounds. So again, you could be 5'2" and 248 pounds. And when you lose the 52 pounds and you're just under 200 pounds, you will still be obese. So it doesn't, quote unquote, cure your obesity. Okay. But 52 pounds of weight loss is a lot of weight loss. Again, through appetite suppression. In the study, same thing, 500 calorie deficit diet plus 30 minutes of exercise 5 days a week. This is not you take Mounjaro and you go about your business. You have to eat less. Sales are just ramping up because it's so new. Even the Mounjaro for diabetes is new. It was only approved, I believe, in 21. So sales were only 280 million in the fourth quarter of 2022, and it costs just over $1,000 for a 1-month supply. So that's going to cost you just over $13,000 a year. Now, pardon me while I fix my lighting here. Okay, so now next slide. Let's talk about the cost projection for a specific employer group, because we have a lot of folks that are involved in employee benefits and employer-sponsored health plans that are on this training session. So let's just take an example of a 500 employee company that has 1,000 lives on their employee benefit plan. They're a self-funded plan. On average, let's just say they spend about $10 million per year in spend. So that's $10,000 for every one of those lives, which is on the high end. It could be this group is probably spending between 5 and 10 million a year in their total spend for their health plan. Okay. So first to do an analysis, you guys say, well, look, we're not going to give these medications to kids that are under 12. So let's just say that only 800 people on this plan are over the age of 12. And then the obesity rate for this group is about 40%. You're going to have some groups that have obesity rates of 30%. You're going to have some groups with obesity rates of 50%. But let's just say that they're at the national average of an obesity rate of 40%. Well, if you take 0.4 times the 800, that means that 300 people within that employee population are actually eligible to take these GLP-1 medications. Okay, so if you go to that technology adoption life cycle, the very beginning of that curve is 2.5% of the population are these early earliest of early adopters. So if you take the 2.5% times the 320 people, that means you're going to have 8 people potentially in year 1 that are on these medications. And what I did was I took sort of the average annual amount for sort of all these different medications and filling them at different pharmacies, et cetera, et cetera. And let's just say that it's about $11,830 per year. Okay, so just under $1,000 a month. Then if you take the 8 times the 11,831, that gets you $95,000 a year that you're going to be spending on these new medications, which if you're spending $10 million a year, that means you're going to see that group's overall medical plus pharmacy cost trend increase 0.9% just because of these medications. If you have 2.5% of the eligible population or 8 people take it. Now, let's say in year 2, the employees, they talk to each other, they talk to their friends, more people start taking it. This is still the early adopters. It's just more of the early adopters, which is 16% total. 16% times the 320 people is 51 people. If you have 51 people on these medications times the 11,831, that gets you $603,000 a year that you are now spending on these medications. That's 6%, a 6% increase in your total spend if you were spending $10 million a year for this group of 1,000. Now, let's say it makes it all the way through the pragmatists, right? Because if you include the early adopters plus the pragmatists, that means 50% of your eligible employees. So 50% of the 320 employees are now taking the GLP-1 medications of Ozempic, Wegovy, or Mounjaro. That's 160 people times the $11,831. That's $1.9 million a year that you would be spending on these medications, which is a 19% increase in your overall trend. Okay, so those are that is a model. Now, there are some employers on this call today that have tens of thousands of lives on their employee health plan. So you can take these numbers, and if you have 10,000 lives on your employee health plan, you would just add a 0 to all these numbers. You would be spending $950,000 in year 1. You would be spending $6 million in year 2. You would be spending $19 million in year 3. Now, let's talk about cost containment options. Remember, whenever you're thinking about cost containment, it's important to think about the healthcare cost equation, which is just the cost per unit times the number of units. In other words, the cost per GLP-1 Ozempic prescription times the number of Ozempic prescriptions. So if you're going to decrease the cost of your pharmacy spend here, you need to either decrease the unit cost, decrease the number of units, or both. So that's a very helpful framework when you're thinking about, well, how do I lower costs? How do I get started? You can think about the unit cost and you can think about the number of units. Okay, so what could you do to lower the unit cost? Okay, you could use a pass-through PBM. Keep in mind, the PBMs, the traditional PBM model of rebate, admin fees, blah, 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 is making money off of these medications. The PBMs want the doctors to take the medications. The PBMs want your plan members to take these medications. The PBM makes more money the more of these medications that are prescribed because they make more rebates. The financial model of the PBM, the traditional PBM, is to get as many people taking as much Ozempic as humanly possible. Okay? A pass-through PBM does not do that. So, in some, I can't predict the future, but if the pharmacy costs for these medications just blows up for employers, this might be a catalyst for more and more movement away from the traditional PBM model. So a sort of unanticipated consequence of these medications is that it might totally shellac the traditional PBMs because all the employers are like, this is ridiculous. And the traditional PBMs are making money hand over fist off of this. And so we got to do something different. Okay, so that's the unit cost. Next, the number of units. Okay, through prior authorization, we're going to restrict how many people can have access to these medications because we're going to put in a prior authorization process. But keep in mind, again, the PBMs tried to do prior authorization for Humira. How'd that work out? Not so well, right? Because again, the PBM doesn't really want people to not take this medication. They really want people to take the medication. So the entire prior auth process is sold to employers as a way of like decreasing the utilization of the medication. But the PBM doesn't really want to do that. They're not like, if you're a shareholder of that PBM, one of your main metrics is script count. So the PBM is literally telling their shareholders that they want more members taking medications, and they want more doctors prescribing more medications. That's what they tell their shareholders. Okay. So now a more controversial way of dealing with this is through a specialty carve out. Now, there are self-funded plans that specifically hire vendors that rewrite their plan documents that say this plan no longer covers these particular specialty medications, or in this case, these GLP-1 medications. And then the patients themselves use the vendor to sign up for a patient assistance program through the pharmaceutical company. Now, that is a hugely controversial technique. I am not here to say whether it's a good or a bad idea, but you as an employer might need to ask yourself, do I got to spare $19 million? And if I don't have a spare $19 million, maybe I need to look into that. At the end of the day, just for the Ozempic, again, like, use the 8 milligram pen, because like, if you're going to buy the Ozempic and it's going to cost you $1,000 anyway, then you might get as much Ozempic as possible for the $1,000. Why spend $1,000 on just 2 milligrams of Ozempic? So you can look at your pharmacy spend and like, what are the dosages of Ozempic that we're spending money on? Like, does the PBM have a program that once you're on the maintenance 1 milligram of Ozempic, that you're not taking the 8 milligram pill, injection pen? Like, come on, guys. This is not rocket science. You're not like hurting anybody. They're still getting their medication. You're just getting more of it.